Today we will be reading Surface Pressure by ConfusionDisorder, the first in a series titled The Trials and Tribulations of Housing Three Alien Menaces, two of whom may be in love. This fic is 1,872 words. Here's the summary. Sonic struggles when there's water around, especially when his friends are in danger. Despite this, he powers through. This certainly isn't the only struggle he faces around this obstacle, though. Or, Knuckles is forced to realize just how difficult saving him must have been for Sonic, putting his appreciation for the other in a whole new light. It's water. It's water, and it's all-consuming, lapping at the crumbling stone walls with a vengeance. It is flooding in at every angle, tired of being ignored and back for revenge. The translucent waves spread white bubbles against solid pillars as the water races into the four walls of the ancient temple. The room is getting smaller. Most cracks in the walls are spraying small streams of oceanic water, while others are breaking open under the increasing pressure. It's water, and his red enemy has fallen victim to its harsh tides. While his brain had been buzzing about trying to escape, one of the large pillars had been tossed up under the commotion of sinister salt water and came crashing down on the echidna's body. He watched, mortified, as water rapidly filled the space under his fallen foe, his arms doing little under the harsh weight of the ocean pushing his back into moss-stained brick. It's difficult to make him out under the boisterous mass of blue drowning him, and it is. It is drowning him. It has to be. The rock pressed against his torso is hefty, even under the weightless waves of the roaring tides, and his enemy is strong, but water is always, always stronger. It's water, and Sonic can't swim, but he's jumping in after the echidna anyway. He can't push himself through the water and towards the other on his own, but the sinking debris do just fine, and soon he's lifting with all he's able to give against the offending architecture that is so harshly intact atop Knuckles' still body, until his body isn't so still anymore. And then the other is free. Safe. Here's a different story. It's water, and Sonic can't swim, but at least his enemy, Knuckles, is safe. No amount of thoughtless, desperate, reaching will alert him now anyway. Not when his thrashing pulls him down even further, and the sound of running water fills his ears over the suffocating sound of his own rapidly beating heart. It's water, and it's going to take his life. He's seeing black before Knuckles can even break the water. There's sand in his quills. It's sticking to the fabric of his gloves, and it's uncomfortably nestled into his matted fur, small granules sticking to wet flesh beneath mounds of sand, soiled, wet fur. God, getting that out would be a nightmare. Hands are pressed firmly against his chest and cheek respectively, large palms radiating absolutely heavenly heat onto his tied, chilled body. So heavenly, in fact, that it escapes his mind for a moment just what that actually means. He's alive. He's alive, and those hands are far too big to be his own, which means it's an unusual effort to pry his eyes open, the dried sea salt sticking to the creases in his screwed-up face and flaking off as he gazes on at the profile looming over his own. The view is blurry at first, as his eyes adjust to the burning bright behind the mysterious person's head, but the indistinguishable shade of red screams at him anyway. Knuckles' expression is sour, his usually cool eyes blown in what can only be described as horror, lips pulled into a harsh scowl that fades as the two lock gazes. The expression is gone just after he has committed it to memory, and so is the echidna's looming presence. When he gathers the energy to prop himself up, he notices that Knuckles is seated a few paces to his right, staring off bitterly into the ocean. He finds that he feels the sentiment a little too closely to his shivering heart. "You don't like water?" Tails asks curiously. He seems almost incredulous at the idea that Sonic has any conceivable fears at all. His own reply is a non-committal shrug as he busies himself with the TV remote. It's been a good few months since the whole Return of Dr. Robotnik shtick, and his two new alien friends had decided to spend this particularly warm summer's day at the Wachowski residence. They were flipping through the channels on the TV mindlessly, commenting on either how boring the options were or how devilishly hot it was, when Tails suggested they go to a public swimming pool to cool down. Sonic's immediate response had been a shiver and the shake of his head, a quick admission of, "I don't like water," and a confused spluttering from Tails later, here they were. Under the fox's scrutinizing gaze, It was becoming increasingly difficult to focus on what the channel log was trying to tell him about what show aired when, and the lapse of silence was not easing his tense shoulders in the slightest. "You're really afraid of water?" Tails asked again, head tilted to the side in deep concentration, one large ear pressed back in thought. The hedgehog huffed softly, leaning back against the couch cushions with a pout. "I never said I was afraid of water." "But you are, aren't you?" Tails shot back quickly, much to Sonic's chagrin. He tried his best not to focus on the prickling sensation of intense purple eyes settled firmly between his slumped shoulder blades. Knuckles is not the kind of person to depict any form of direct, well, anything really. He shows his affections through small actions or indirect phrases that you really have to read between the lines to figure out. And when he's excited, his smile is just slightly sharper, although he rarely says so out loud when he is. Anger and frustration seep through most clearly. Sonic supposed years of isolation will do that to a guy. But concern? Concern is controlled glances that last just a second too long. It's the soft, downward tilt to his mouth that's gone before you can even notice. It's a hand twitching into a fist because he doesn't know how to help. And it's the way he knocks his shoulder against your own in a silent mantra of comfort. It is not open expressions, and a reassuring hand clasped around his own, shakier one. They had decided to go to the beach. It was a day of relatively clear skies, with high temperatures in the forecast. Tails had been excited, and so was he, originally. He liked the beach. The sand was nice and warm beneath his fur, despite how all-encompassing the small granules often were, and building small structures out of small damp rocks was always fun. The problem came with the boat. It was Maddie's idea. She thought it'd be a fun bonding activity for all of the boys, so she hired a small fishing boat for the 4 males and let them out into the world, or, more accurately, the ocean. The cold, deep, unforgiving ocean. It was very different, now, staring out into the waves as they smoothed over one another, fighting leisurely for a false sense of dominance. Before, when he stood over the warm sand, the very world hanging in the balance, he had managed to swallow his tongue and hide his hammering heart behind a well-constructed wall of unbridled adrenaline. Running over the ocean was terrifying, sure, but he had momentum and desperation on his side. Now, if he attempted something similar, he would surely sink about as gracefully as his heart as it plummeted into his stomach. He had done well at first, pretending that the infinite body of water was simply the much smaller, much more familiar lake that he and Donut Lord frequented as a fishing spot. That lake was shallower, and if he opened his eyes under the water, he could see the bottom. Granted, he didn't exactly want to do that, and he didn't like that lake much either, but it was manageable. Tolerable. It was not the ocean, and that made it infinitely better in contrast to his current situation. And then the boat rocked. Now, Sonic liked to pride himself on his level-headedness, but as his wide eyes met the ocean, that he certainly could not see the bottom of, even if he tried to look, he was gone. The lifting and subsequent tensing of his quills and flattening of his ears was instantaneous, pupils shrinking in alarm as every terrible possibility flooded into his mind. His ears felt like they were ringing, no cognitive sound was reaching his brain, and there was an unmistakable tunnel visioning effect that forced his overactive imagination into overdrive. All his senses were overridden by the sight, smell, taste, sound of the water that surrounded them in all directions. A warm hand wrapped around his own, bringing the cold imagery of water in his lungs to a shocking halt. Knuckles' expression was open, but still held the very telltale hardness that seemed to be woven into the warrior's very bones. The moment their eyes locked seemed to last forever, his heart both calming to the panic and then freezing up again, this time for an entirely new reason. At least he wasn't as focused on the impending restlessness of the unstoppable water just below their feet anymore. Sometimes, Sonic dreamt of water. His mind's eye would perceive the waves as they winked the sunlight at him, crashing soothingly onto soft sands turned icy and wet. He felt the salty burn of seawater in his scrapes, suffocating him until he was sinking far below the surface. In some of his dreams, he could swim. He would grasp at the water desperately, reaching up to the surface as he kicked his small legs as fast as he could under the heavy pressure of the ocean. The light of the sun would bleed into his wide eyes, teasing hope if he could only move faster than the depths pulled him down. Usually, he wasn't fast enough. Sometimes, he was. He much preferred the times where he sank, funnily enough. At least then, the abyss would cloud his vision as he drowned into a disoriented, wakeful state. At least then, he wouldn't be able to reach one slender arm up towards the surface, one that would usually break the tides and expose him to the heavily heated air, only to discover that there was a rubbery barrier beneath his outstretched fingers instead, because then he wouldn't have to experience the sheer panic of being trapped beneath the surface, watching as the world above him glistened, just out of reach. Instead of light-hearted wakeness, like the other option provided, this dream left him screaming. It shot him up in his bed, fists clenched into soft linen as a frantic shout escaped his mouth still gasping for air. Usually, he would be catatonic as he readjusted to the cool night air, only snapping free of the nightmare's hold when hot tears drenched his fur, causing him to panic himself into awareness once more. With Knuckles, he comes to with large hands cutting through his poised quills, a low, gravelly voice shushing him with gentle reassurances. With Knuckles, he's eased back under the covers with strong arms around his waist, an unspoken promise of being kept afloat hanging between them as they both drifted back to sleep. With Knuckles, he thinks, the water isn't so scary anymore. Thank you for listening. For those of you who don't know, I have been given full blanket permission to read all of Confusion Disorder's work library. So as of right now, I'm going to start reading the Trials and Tribulations series, starting from Surface Pressure and then ending at, well, whatever the end one is at that time, because this is an ongoing series. Anyway, yeah, you may have noticed that I haven't recorded anything in a while. Sorry for the accidental hiatus. I've been quite busy with real world stuff, but I'm back. Hopefully, I don't know. I mean, I know that I'm gonna have an inconsistent schedule anyway, but I thought it'd be good to let you know. I'm not gonna stop doing this. I'm very busy and very disorganized. But yeah, it is also an unofficial sonknux week, so this is my ode to that. Anyway, yeah, thank you for listening. Yippee!